This week's Artist Spotlight is Arcane Ghosts. Check out more of them at the end of this video. What's up, everybody? I'm Finn McKenty. This is the Punk Rock MBA, and today we're here to talk about one of the scene's most unlikely success stories, Ronnie Radke.
I am a story of redemption. I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to lose everything and to come back. I am proud.
After rising to prominence with Escape the Fate back in the mid-2000s, he struggled with addiction and eventually went to prison after being involved in a fight where, unfortunately, someone lost their life. And most of the time, that would be the end of the story, right? A once promising musician screwed up, derailed their career, and burned out. But for Ronnie, that was just the beginning of the story. Since going to prison, he got sober, formed a new band called Falling in Reverse, and nearly 20 years into his career, he is bigger than ever, most recently selling out a headlining arena tour all over the country, despite being one of the most polarizing figures in the scene who, to put it mildly, has a lot of people who are not exactly a fan of his.
How am I a piece of shit?
Because you are, dude.
You don't even know me, homie.
You know.
You don't know me.
Get
out. You're a bitch. Fuck you and homie.
So how did Ronnie go from doing time in state prison to selling out arenas? And what does the future hold for him? Will he just self-sabotage again? Those are the questions that I will try to answer in this video. And also, I'm excited to have Tiege Hanley as the sponsor of today's video. They help men start and maintain a skincare routine by simplifying the whole process. Honestly, it's the best skincare system for guys like you and me. I recommend that you start with their Level 1 system, which comes with all the basics. A daily face wash to get all the dirt and grime off your skin, a 2 times per week exfoliating scrub to get rid of all those dead skin cells, an AM moisturizer with SPF 20 because you should always be protecting your skin from the sun, and a PM moisturizer to help your skin stay hydrated and healthy throughout the night. My favorite part about Tiege Hanley is that every box comes with an instruction card that tells you when to use each product, how much to use, and in what order. Their products have made my skin look and feel better than ever, but you don't have to just take my word for it. They have over 7,000 5-star reviews on their website from satisfied customers all over the world. And because Tiege Hanley is sponsoring today's video, they are offering my viewers a great deal. Just click the first link in the description and you'll get 30% off your first box plus a free gift. So don't miss out on this amazing deal. Click that link and get started today. After being in a few small local bands, Ronnie's first band to get any real traction was Escape the Fate, which formed back in 2004 in Las Vegas, Nevada. And their big break came in 2005 when they entered a local radio station's Battle of the Bands style contest that was judged by My Chemical Romance. They ultimately won the contest and even got to play with My Chemical Romance on the local date of their tour with Alkaline Trio. And on the back of the hype from that contest and Escape the Fate's demo, they signed with Epitaph Records in late 2005 and released their debut album, Dying Is Your Latest Fashion, in 2006, with the big single that you've probably heard being Situations.
Situations are irrelevant now.
And to be honest, I had no idea who they were back then, but when I saw this video, I could immediately tell that there was something different about them. Mostly that they weren't like depressed and whiny like so many of the other bands around that time. They had more the same vibe as 80s bands like Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses. A little wild, a little mix of like dangerous and arrogant, which honestly is kind of what the scene needed at the time. That album became Epitaph's fastest selling debut for a new artist, and the band seemed like they were on their way to becoming the next big thing until Ronnie's wild lifestyle caught up with him and got him kicked out of the band. And a lot of people think that what happened is that Ronnie killed somebody, but this is just not true.
I didn't go to prison for 2 years for murder. I didn't go to prison for murder. I went to a fight. I went to fight somebody, and they had a gun, and they pulled the fucking gun out and shot at me. So my friend shot them and fucking killed them.
However, Ronnie was charged with possessing brass knuckles, got probation for that, and after violating the terms of his probation, was eventually sentenced to prison after being a wanted fugitive.
Take a good look, Ronnie Radke, the authorities searching high and low for the 24-year-old on the run.
He'd also been kicked out of Escape the Fate, replaced by Craig Mabbitt of Bless the Fall, who at the time was not exactly the biggest fan of Ronnie.
And by the way, anybody hoping to hear new shit from Ronnie Radke, he just got with heroin in prison, so he's staying there for a very long time. so fuck off.
And normally, this is where you would expect the story to end for someone like Ronnie. A once promising musician about to break through into the mainstream, fucks it all up and goes to prison. But this is really just the beginning for Ronnie. Prison is one of those things that tends to either make or break someone. I've never done time myself, but both of my parents were corrections officers, and I have several uncles and friends who did do time, and I've seen it play out both ways. And for Ronnie, it seems like prison was the wake-up call that he needed. Shortly after he got out, an interviewer asked him, "Are you in any way glad that you went to jail?" And I think his answer really spells it out. "Oh yeah, I would have never been able to write this good of a record if I didn't go. I'm very happy because now I'm clean. I've been clean for a long time now. If I hadn't gone away, I would never have changed. I'd probably be dead." And while in prison, he wrote what would become the debut album from Falling in Reverse, The Drug in Me Is You, which came out on Epitaph in 2011. It debuted at number 19 on Billboard, and it proved that Ronnie was back. He'd been to hell and made it out the other side, seemingly stronger than ever.
I turn tragedy into melody.
And personally, I think this album is really strong, but it did kind of sound like a more polished version of what he had been doing with Escape the Fate. And what really showed his evolution was the second album from Falling in Reverse. But before I talk about that album, I want to just pause for a second. Because some of you may be asking yourself, why are you even making this video? Do you just want to lick Ronnie's balls? Well, the answer is that this video isn't really about Ronnie at all. It is about you. Because no matter how badly you may have fucked up your life, you probably didn't fuck up as bad as Ronnie did by getting kicked out of his band, going to prison, getting addicted to drugs, and seemingly throwing away everything that he had achieved. A lot of people spend their time in prison getting high, gambling, or fighting, but Ronnie used that time to get clean and write his best album yet, so that when he got out, he was already ahead of where he was when he went in. So my point here is that if you feel like you've just totally fucked up your life and it's too late to fix it, it's not. If Ronnie did it, then so can you. No matter how much you doubt yourself, just keep moving forward. Which brings me to the second Falling in Reverse album, Fashionably Late, which is my personal favorite thing that he's ever recorded. If the first album was picking up where Dying Is Your Latest Fashion left off, this one showed that he had already moved on from that sound, especially the lead single, Alone.
Fuck you bitches, I'm a business. I be kissing on your missus. What you spend in 15 months is what I spend in 15 minutes.
And this album in general is kind of all over the place. It goes from metal to poppy rock, there's some rap, there's some electronic elements all over the place. For example, in Kerrang's review, they said that they couldn't decide if Falling in Reverse's new album is genius or guff. And they ultimately gave it a score of who the fuck knows. And so, as would kind of become a pattern in Ronnie's career, critics mostly hated this album, but fans loved it, and it was his most successful release yet, coming in at number 17 on Billboard. His next album, Just Like You, was somewhat of a return to the post-hardcore sound, followed by his 2017 album, Coming Home, which I view as being maybe the biggest turning point in his career since going to prison. Because although that album had Falling in Reverse's biggest single to date with Superhero, according to Ronnie, the album was kind of a flop. As he later said, "My album Coming Home didn't do well. It tanked. It did bad. It didn't do well. The numbers don't lie." But instead of doing what most people might do, which is making excuses or crying about it or blaming the industry or whatever, he used the failure of that album as an opportunity to reinvent himself yet again and pivot towards an emphasis on singles instead of albums. So I looked to rap like Drake and I was like, what are they doing? And they're putting out singles. I'm like, okay, so what if I put all my creativity into one song instead of putting all my creativity into 10 songs and being rushed to get it out? And that ended up being the last full-length album that Falling in Reverse has put out to this day, which might seem like an obvious decision now where everybody kind of understands that singles are more important than albums. But remember, this was back in 2017, 2018. That was a huge risk that went against everything that people in the rock scene say about how the album is always the most important thing. But once again, they were wrong and he was right. With the new focus on singles, every song that he put out seemed like it was bigger and bigger than the last one, ultimately leading up to the release of Popular Monster in 2019. This was by far the biggest song of his career, eventually going platinum and putting Ronnie onto a whole new level. I think with this song, what he really showed is that he was bigger than that whole Warped Tour kind of scene that he came from. This really put him into the conversation of just a mainstream rock artist. And once again, the point that I want to make here is about you. That every time you fail or fuck up or come up short, that is an opportunity for you to learn and reinvent yourself just like Ronnie has. But only if you have the humility to admit that you failed, to see where you went wrong, and if you're willing to put in the work. And you can see that in Ronnie if you look at what he said about writing Popular Monster. I'm like, I'll just keep making it until when I wake up the next day, I don't question the song anymore. I'm like, dang, it's like 7 a.m. I'm going to get coffee. I put the song on. I'm like, this slaps. Instead of being like, it's pretty good, it's like, no, this is insanely good. And he also understood that when it comes to marketing and distribution and building an audience, he also needed to adapt with the times. Remember, Escape the Fate came out back in the mid-2000s, back in the MySpace days, and there's a lot of bands from back then that really never adapted to the new landscape. But Ronnie saw the power of all these new marketing channels, in particular TikTok, when Good Girls, Bad Guys went viral on the app, and he chose to lean into that. As well as YouTube reaction channels, which were kind of blowing up at the time, which again, he saw and leaned into that by making songs with these kind of big, crazy moments and visuals that make it easy for reactors to work with. As he said, it's free. If you make the videos crazy enough to draw people's attention or for people to react to them, it's just free marketing. Some of these people have massive amounts of subscribers watching them, and I've noticed a massive influx in fans who are like, I had no idea you existed, but thanks to so-and-so, now I do, and I'm a huge fan. I think it's also worth pointing out that his newer songs like Popular Monster, or more recently, Zombified and Watch the World Burn, are much closer in style to Alone by Falling in Reverse than anything that Escape the Fate ever did. So as much as the critics may have hated that song back in 2013, it turns out he was actually right about where things were headed.
It's so stupid.
And the proof of that is that Falling in Reverse just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where I would say they're probably the biggest band of their generation, most recently selling out an entire headlining tour, including legendary venues like Red Rocks. And by now, a lot of you are probably saying, well, wait a minute, why are you praising this guy that's just a giant narcissistic asshole? And isn't he a transphobe? Well, to that, my answer is if I actually thought he was a transphobe, I wouldn't be making a video praising him. Okay, well, how about all those times on Twitter or TikTok that he went after somebody and called them an ugly loser? How can you support that?
My energy towards Ronnie will never change. It's fucking on sight. Boy, if you don't get your fucking marshmallow...
Well, to be honest, I'm completely on his side there for a couple of reasons. For one, I think a lot of the people who he went after learned a valuable lesson, which is that sometimes if you fuck with the bull, you get the horns. They may have forgotten that words have consequences, and that when you talk shit about somebody, they may hear it and they might not like it. And just like you have the right to express your opinion, well, they have the right to express theirs as well. I remember learning this lesson back when I was about 14 years old. I was at the arcade and I beat this kid pretty badly at Street Fighter, and I was talking a bunch of shit to him about how he sucked and all that. And he said, dude, if you don't shut the fuck up, I'm gonna punch you in the face. I kept talking, and guess what? He punched me right in the face. I didn't really know what to do because I could tell that this kid was tougher than me, so I just sort of like put my tail between my legs and walked away. And that was the last time that I talked shit to somebody like that. And so I learned a very valuable lesson that day. If you run your mouth to the wrong person at the wrong time, you might end up with a black eye. And I think that some of the people who get clowned by Ronnie, they probably learned that same lesson too. And second of all, even if you think Ronnie is a total asshole, the fact of the matter is that a lot of what people say about him are just complete straight up lies. For example, this guy who accused Ronnie of multiple crimes that he has never committed. And then Ronnie comes back with this. And you can say that's petty and Ronnie should just let it go because it's just Twitter and it doesn't matter. But here's my question. Would you let it go? If people accused you of committing murder and being a sex offender on pretty much a daily basis, which is what they do to Ronnie, would you just let it go? Would you just ignore it and say, oh, that's just Twitter and go about your day? I bet you wouldn't. I bet you'd be pretty fucking upset, and for good reason, right? Because it's not okay to spread lies about people for clout or just because you don't like their band.
I think it's really messed up that fans will take advantage of people in power like this and try to ruin their lives all by getting followers and attention. It's disgusting. So if you're a fan out there watching this and you've done this or you're thinking about doing that, you should be ashamed of yourself. It's gross and disgusting, and nobody will appreciate you in the long run. It'll age poorly. Please be honest.
And so you could say that it's petty for people to come after him like that, but I don't think it is. Because once again, to bring this back to you, do you want to live in a world in which people can just make up blatant lies about you that could potentially ruin your career or relationships without those people having to face any consequences for it? I sure don't. So personally, I'm glad that he puts these people in their places. And I'm sure that more than a few of them have had that moment where they thought to themselves, oh shit, I may have just fucked up really badly. When they realized that by accusing him of a crime on Twitter, they've just opened themselves up for a defamation lawsuit. So personally, I'm glad that Ronnie comes after these people, and I think that you should be too. Because today it's Ronnie, but tomorrow it could be you. And last but not least, I really like this quote from Ronnie. It's kind of long, but bear with me. A lot of really big, famous singers tend to suffer from having a very low self-esteem and a really big ego. When you insult those people and throw rocks at them, they don't hit the ego because the ego is too high. But you can bet your ass that they hit their self-esteem, which is much lower down. You only have to look at a song like Alone to see that the same principle applies to me, because in the verses I'll talk about how much better I am than somebody, but then in the chorus I'm crying out because I don't want to be on my own. There's a crippling insecurity mixed with this belief that I'm the best, and I think it definitely explains who I am as a person better than anything else ever could. So just to sum it up, Ronnie is definitely not perfect. He's definitely done and said things that he probably shouldn't have, but who hasn't? And personally, I respect people who are willing to go through all of this in public, because it's through people like Ronnie that ultimately we get the chance to learn about ourselves. And before I go, let's check out Arcane Ghosts. This is Roller Coaster.
Tell me everything you're sitting on the front porch, standing at the back of your mind. 'Cause I will tell you everything that's running through my mind and making my brain shake.
And this is Paralyzed.
Fall asleep, hear the rain, kerosene to my dreams, and now paralyzed, so paralyzed.
And if you want to hear more from Arcane Ghosts, you can check them out on YouTube, Spotify, or Instagram, and there's links to all three of those in the description of this video. All right, my friends, that does it for this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments, and I would like to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon, especially those of you who support at the True Cult level or above. Patrons get access to all my videos and podcasts early. I do giveaways. There are members-only channels on my Discord that I'm super active in, and there's also a way to have me review your music or artwork. So if that is something that sounds cool to you, hit the link in the description of this video. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.